You treat every thought like it deserves attention. It doesn't. Most of what passes through your mind is not instruction. It's noise. But you don't filter it. You follow it. That's where your control disappears. Not because your thoughts are strong, because your response to them is automatic. A thought appears. You react. No pause, no distance, no examination. And that reaction shapes your behavior before you even realize something happened. You assume that because a thought feels real, it must be relevant. It isn't. Your mind produces impressions constantly. Doubt, resistance, excuses, interpretations that reduce your willingness to act. None of them are commands, but you treat them like they are. You feel hesitation and you stop. You feel uncertainty and then you delay. You feel discomfort and you withdraw. Not because you decided to, because you didn't question what you felt. That's the pattern. You don't lose strength in difficult moments. You lose it in unexamined ones, moments where a thought enters and you allow it to dictate your next move without resistance. And the more you repeat that, the more authority those thoughts gain. Not because they deserve it, because you give it to them. You've trained yourself to obey your own mind without scrutiny. So now, even weak thoughts carry weight. A small doubt becomes a reason to stop. A minor discomfort becomes justification to step back. And over time, your actions begin to reflect those lower standards, not your intentions. Your intentions exist in silence. Your behavior follows what is loud. And what is loud is usually not what is useful. You say you want discipline, but discipline requires something you avoid. Separation. The ability to see a thought without becoming it. You don't do that. You merge with it instantly. You think something, and within seconds, you are acting as if it's true. That's how control slips, not in extreme situations. In small internal agreements, you agree with thoughts that weaken your position. I'll do it later. It's not the right time. I'm not ready. You don't challenge them, you accept them because they sound reasonable. That's the problem. Weak thoughts don't present themselves as weakness. They present themselves as logic, and you trust them. Without asking where they lead, you follow them, and they take you in the same direction every time, away from effort, away from consistency, away from anything that requires sustained pressure. You don't notice the pattern because each individual thought feels small, but the accumulation isn't. It shapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as inconsistent, distracted, unable to hold focus. Not because you are, because you keep reinforcing that outcome through repeated agreement. You give attention to what reduces you, and attention is power. Whatever you attend to grows, not in complexity, in influence. You attend to hesitation, it becomes dominant. You attend to doubt, it becomes persuasive. You attend to discomfort, it becomes decisive. And slowly, without realizing it, your internal environment shifts. You no longer question whether a thought deserves attention. You assume it does. That assumption is what weakens you, not the thought itself. The lack of control over your response. You think control means forcing yourself to think differently. It doesn't. Control is refusing to follow every thought that appears. You don't need to eliminate them. You need to stop obeying them. But that requires awareness at the exact moment a thought enters, not after you've already acted on it. That moment is brief. You feel a shift, a suggestion, a small pull in a certain direction. And before you notice, you're already moving. That's where the loss happens. Not in action, in the absence of pause. You don't pause, you react, and reaction becomes habit. Once it becomes habit, it no longer feels like a choice. It feels like truth. You believe your thoughts define your reality. They don't. They reflect your conditioning, what you've repeated, what you've allowed, what you've never interrupted. Your mind is not aligned with what's best for you. It's aligned with what you've proven you'll follow. You've proven that you'll follow discomfort out of effort. You've proven that you'll follow doubt away from action. So your mind produces more of it. Not to sabotage you, to match you. That's how it works. It adapts to your behavior, not your goals. Your goals don't matter if your behavior contradicts them, and your behavior is being shaped by thoughts you never question. You think the solution is to become mentally stronger. It isn't. It's to stop being mentally passive. Right now, you're passive. You allow your internal state to dictate your external actions. You let thoughts decide what you do. And because many of those thoughts are weak, your actions become weak. Not all at once. Gradually. You don't collapse. You drift. You reduce effort slightly. You delay slightly. You disengage slightly. And those slight adjustments accumulate until the gap between what you say you want and what you actually do becomes visible. You see it, but you still follow the same thoughts because you haven't separated from them. You still believe them, even when they've led you to the same result repeatedly. That's the contradiction. You trust a system that keeps producing outcomes you don't want, not because you evaluated it, because you never questioned it. That's where control begins, not in changing what you think, in questioning why you follow it. Every thought is a suggestion, not an order, but you treat it like an order. You don't need to fight your mind. You need to stop obeying it blindly. That's the shift, subtle but precise. You notice the thought. You don't move. You feel the urge. You don't follow it. You create distance, and in that distance, something changes. You see the thought for what it is, temporary, not authoritative, not decisive, just present. And once you see it that way, it loses its ability to control you, not completely, but enough. Enough to interrupt the pattern, enough to prevent automatic reaction, enough to choose differently. That's where strength begins, not in overpowering your mind, in refusing to be led by it without question. You still think the problem is what you think. It isn't. The problem is how quickly you obey it. There is a gap between a thought appearing and you acting on it. That gap exists, but you don't use it. You move too fast. A thought suggests something. You follow it. A feeling shifts slightly. You adjust your behavior. There is no resistance, no delay, no examination, just movement. And that movement is what keeps you weak, not the thought itself, the speed of your agreement. You've trained yourself to respond immediately, so now even the smallest impulse carries weight. You don't evaluate it. You don't measure its direction. You don't ask where it leads. You just move. That's the pattern, and the pattern is efficient. It doesn't need to convince you. It only needs to appear. Because once it appears, you act. That's why your behavior feels out of control. It isn't chaotic. It's consistent, consistently automatic. You don't lack control. You lack interruption. Interruption is what creates space, and space is what allows choice. Without space, there is no choice, only reaction. You think you're choosing, you're not. You're continuing what you've repeated, continuing what you've allowed, continuing what you never stopped to question. That's why nothing changes. Not because you don't want it to, because your responses are faster than your awareness. You notice after the distraction, after the delay, after the decision, and by then it's already done. So you look back and call it inconsistency, but it wasn't inconsistency. It was execution, precise execution of a pattern you didn't interrupt. You say you want to be disciplined, but discipline doesn't begin with action. It begins with delay, a controlled delay, not hesitation, observation. You feel the impulse, you don't move. You notice the thought, you don't follow it. You let it exist without turning it into behavior. That's where most people fail, not because they can't act, because they can't stay still. Stillness exposes the process, and the process is uncomfortable. You see how often your mind pulls you away, how frequently it suggests easier paths, how quickly it replaces effort with alternatives. And once you see that clearly, you understand something. The thoughts aren't strong, your obedience is. You've been giving authority to things that don't deserve it. not intentionally, automatically. And automation is powerful because it removes effort. It removes awareness. It removes responsibility. You don't feel like you're choosing weakness. You feel like things just happen, but they don't. They follow a sequence: thought, reaction, reinforcement. That sequence repeats, and repetition builds certainty. Not certainty in truth, certainty in behavior. You become certain that you will follow the thought, so your mind keeps producing them, not to control you, to match you. You've shown it what you follow, so it gives you more of it. That's why trying to change your thoughts doesn't work. They're not the source. Your response is, you can't control what appears, but you can control what moves you. That control is quiet. There's no force in it, no visible struggle. Just a refusal to act immediately, a refusal to treat every internal signal as instruction. You sit with it, the discomfort, the urge, the pressure to move, and you don't move. At first it feels unnatural because you've never done it. You've always reacted. Now you're holding position, and holding position requires more control than action, because action releases tension. Stillness contains it. You feel the urge build. You feel your mind pushing for movement. You feel the pressure increasing, and nothing happens. You stay, and in that staying, something shifts. Not outside, inside. The thought loses urgency. The feeling loses intensity. The impulse loses direction. Not instantly, but noticeably. You realize it doesn't control you unless you follow it. That realization is quiet, but it changes everything, because now you see the mechanism. You see how often you've been pulled, how easily you've been redirected, how consistently you've agreed. And once you see it, you can't fully go back. You still feel the same thoughts, the same impulses, the same discomfort. But now there's a layer between them and your actions, a layer of observation, and that layer slows everything down. You don't react as quickly. You don't follow as easily. You don't accept every suggestion. That's where discipline stabilizes, not in forcing yourself forward, in preventing yourself from stepping back. You don't need to add strength. You need to remove obedience. Obedience to thoughts that weaken your position. Obedience to impulses that reduce your control. Obedience to patterns that keep you where you are. You stop obeying, not aggressively. Consistently, you let the thought pass. You let the urge fade. You let the discomfort exist without turning any of it into action. And over time, something becomes clear. You are not your thoughts. You are what you follow. And now you choose less. You follow less. You react less. Not because the thoughts stopped, because you stopped giving them power. That's control, not loud, not visible, but real. And once it's real, it holds. Because it's no longer based on what you feel. It's based on what you allow. And what you allow is finally under your control.